Dr. McClendon, who will lead us in our invocation, followed by the pledge.
Dear Lord, we come to you with thankful hearts. We thank you for the blessings of life that you give us. We thank you for the state. Thank you for the privilege of being physicians, healthcare providers. And thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Just pray that as we make important decisions, that you give us wisdom that comes from you. That we make good decisions for the people of the state. Just be with us all today.
Amen.
Face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Cleveland, if you would perform our roll call. We are also in the process right now of trying to solidify Dr. Gersh, his presence.
And I just got a message from Dr. Dotson. She said she's on her way. So
Okay, wonderful.
I've got my roll call sheet mixed in with my others.
You could just sheet and read the names on the board.
Dr. Owens,
Present.
Dr. Lippincott,
Here.
Dr. Joyner, Dr. McClendon, here, Dr. Kennard,
Here.
Dr. Gersh, Dr. Gibbons,
Here.
Dr. Dotson, Dr. Loper, here, Major General Eric Herring, Mr. Breland, Ms. Gaines,
Here.
have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to acknowledge our special guest. Without spilling all of the personal business, we are so glad to have Ms. Alexis Morris back, our Special Attorney General Assistant. Yay. We're not gonna say why she was out, but she had a baby. Yay. And of course, Lori Busick, who's from Brown Court Reporting. Thank you so much for being here. At this time, we'd like to open the floor for any announcements or public comment. Can you believe that was only 5 seconds? It seemed like an eternity, didn't it? And so hearing none, we will move on to the executive director's report.
I guess we can just start with the licensure slide. So in March, April, we issued 98 additional new licenses for MDs and POs. And 112 except was the January and February report. So down just a little bit on that. Podiatrists, 1, PAs, 11. And then through the compact, we issued an additional 103 MDPO licenses. We issued letters of qualification to 10 applicants. And then for other states, we did certifications of 561 positions. My thing is working. It's made us see. Give me the next slide. Did we lose our IT department?
No, IT is over there. He's working.
Right there. All right, March and April, we received 88 new complaints. We were able to close 18 cases. We opened 25 new cases. The total cases open is a little, it's different. I know those numbers don't add up, but the 75 cases is actually a snapshot taken on Monday. So it wasn't taken at the end of April. It was taken this week. And in cases closed, we were able to get that number back up, within cases closed within 7 days. We got that number back up to over 60%. Next slide, please. We requested 76 PMP reports. 32 of those took additional action. Next slide. This is renewal season, and I meant to get Kent Slade to run me a new thing this morning. Total active licensees going into renewals was 14,773. As of Monday morning, 3,406 MDDOPAs have renewed, giving us 23% renewal rate. And it's early in renewal, but so far. Only 9% of compact licensees have renewed. And as of Monday morning, 6 of 9 board members had renewed. And I know at least one more has, 2 more have. So we're at least up to 8 out of 9 board members have renewed.
Not bragging, but I wonder who the first one to renew was.
Were you at 12:01? I wonder.
First day. As a matter of fact, I logged in at the end of April and it told me I couldn't do it yet.
So I thought I would just go over some highlights numbers from the legislative session as far as our budget is concerned. And fiscal year 2025, we have been approved in salaries for 2.6 million-ish, a little bit plus. That's up almost 300,000. There's a lot of reasons for that. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. We kept travel the same at 50,000. Contractual services, 850,000. Commodities, 50,000. Equipment, 122,000, and which is up, you'll notice, and I'll comment on that later as well. Subsidies, loans, and grants, 730,000 for a total budget authority of 4.4 million, which is essentially what we were asking for. So we had, as far as budget goes, we had a good return. Thanks. So the salary increase of 300,000, it includes increase in health insurance costs for state employees, full funding for all positions. And that was real important because last year they gave us positions, but then they didn't fund them. And so we weren't able to hire people into the position. So now we have full funding for all those positions and we'll begin hiring immediately. There's a 0.5% increase in agency retirement match. That's just part of them trying to pump more money into the PERS plan so that it stays solid. And then the 2% progression is the average amount that the legislature has approved for us to give raises this year to the staff. So we'll start working on that as well. The equipment increase of 89,000, we're getting new audio equipment, hopefully by the next board meeting. So every time y'all hear it buzz today, just think next board meeting is going to be better. Okay. And then we have put into place a 4-year plan to replace all of the computer systems in the office 25% at a time. So 20,000 of that was for replacement of computer systems. And we'll do that on a rolling basis over the next 4 years until all of them have been replaced. And most likely at that point, we'll just cycle back to it. This is a reminder to the board members because some of y'all have not been signing your vouchers. So please sign your travel vouchers that are in the pocket of your binders.
But they're not in the binder.
You have them.
Yeah.
Francis has them. I thought you put them in the binder.
Thought we did too.
Okay. All right, so Francis has them, but we will make sure that you have the opportunity to sign those before we do that. Next slide, please. So congratulations to Shobha Gaines for being elected.
I love this.
For those of y'all that weren't there, we all wore these big blue stickers. And the question everybody kept coming up to us and asking us, what is a Shobha?
She is a showboat.
But it was a strategy that worked and she won her election. Congratulations.
Yes.
And then next
Also,
slide.
congratulations are due to you too. You've
Yes.
Been appointed to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Now sworn in as a board of director for FSMB. Yes. So, and then, next slide. Before we actually do questions, I wanted to make sure I mentioned a few things. And I said this at the executive committee meeting, but it's worth repeating. Mississippi was very well represented at the FSMB meeting. We had, Mississippi had 3 speakers on the main stage, for big events. Dr. Owens, myself, and, Dr. Hamilton from FSPHB or our PHB. I already mentioned that Shobha was elected to the nominations committee. I was sworn in, to the board of directors. It was just a really big meeting for little old Mississippi, and I think we should all be proud of ourselves. Somebody reminded me of one thing I didn't mention at the executive committee meeting. And that's, there was one meeting Saturday morning that really touched home to me. And that was decreasing anxiety in our relationship with our licensees and how we can do that better. And I thought there was some really good lessons to be learned in that lecture. And I'm going to go back and watch it again. But one of the things we're already doing is, y'all know, I meet with licensees in what we term our regulatory compliance meeting. And when we send them that letter or that email, we're going to start putting full information in there about what we have been investigating them for, what we would like to talk to them about, and the reason for the meeting, so that they are fully informed, which hasn't always been the practice here. And the idea is, to the greatest extent possible, to reduce anxiety about the board and meeting with the board or anything like that. It's to the greatest extent that we possibly can. So anyway, that was something I learned there. If y'all learned something, you want to share it with me, changes we can make to improve the way we do things better, I'm open to all suggestions. So if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions I can. Other than that, that's my report.
I'd just like to add that, that every year the Federation of Physicians Health Programs has a conjoint session with the FSMB. And this year, Dr. Michelle Owens facilitated the panel, and our own Dr. Scott Hamilton, who was the outgoing president of the Federation of Physicians Health Programs, presented and emphasized the importance of confidentiality to the participants for there to be an effective program for people to participate. And so, like you said, Mississippi was very well represented. And Dr. Hamilton is the outgoing president of that organization. Yeah, that's all.
So, and I will say that both related to my anxiety comment and to Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Owens' presentations. Participation within the PHB is up, and it's not all impairment. A lot of it is anxiety related stuff, physician burnout stuff, that people are just seeking relief. So I'm glad that the word is out there about the physicians health programs and that our licensees are taking advantage of having such a great resource as our PHB is. So.
Yeah. Just to kind of piggyback on your revelation, and especially talking about physician anxiety, I think it's that the presentation that Dr. Cleveland referenced specifically spoke about
with narrative examples, how people actually feel when they're brought into this process. And it's a concept of, people for whom there are allegations or concerns, and as they've navigated the process, how isolating and difficult that process can be. And during that time, it creates this sense of even opposition with the board. So we actually aren't able to fully be viewed as a resource or reference for them as they are navigating the process. And so I think that number one, this change that you are proposing is really something, when you hear it, you're like, why weren't we doing that all along? Because it really is about transparency. And I think that when people know, then they can come prepared to really have honest discussions. It may actually help move our processes forward a little bit more quickly, because it's kind of like you get called into the principal's office. Well, most of the time when you go to the principal's office, you know what you're getting sent for. Like if you get in trouble in school and they send you, you know what you're going for. It's not like somebody just comes over the intercom and says, we need you in the principal's office. And as you're walking, you're wondering, what the heck did I do? So hopefully it will help to engender a better relationship and not so much suspicion from licensees, because they feel like we are dealing with them in a more transparent manner, which actually that transparency and I think professional respect kind of go hand in hand. And hopefully it will. I don't know that people are just all of a sudden gonna not be nervous if they get a letter from us or somebody shows up on the door. But I do think that everything that we can do to help make them feel better about the process and to feel informed is gonna only be beneficial for all parties involved. Any other thoughts?
Madam President, just to give kind of a personal, I guess, case example. About a month ago, the physician that my mom was incredibly respectful. Physician calls me, says, an investigator just walked in my office. And the anxiety that he had, fear that he had no idea what was going on. I'm just not walking through this. This is how our process works. Be honest, get a lawyer, but be honest with them. Just work with the process. There's a good chance it probably not be easy, but just work with the process. But if he had gotten kind of a document saying, just let me know, we're going to be here this next week, and this is why. Well, there's always going to be fear and anxiety to the process, but we always need to analyze the effect that we have.
And I think we all understand how anxiety provoking that can be. It'll never erase it completely. But we can try to do better, and we will. Madam President, just for the record, I'd like to note that Dr. Dotson has now joined us, and Dr. Church is live by Zoom.
Awesome. All right. So let the record reflect that those two board members are now here and present among us. And they didn't miss any of the exciting action, so we're good. All right. Anything else as we prepare to move on in the agenda from the executive director's report? All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Cleveland, for your leadership. And don't want to miss out on the opportunity. Again, I said this during the executive committee meeting, but never want to miss out on the opportunity to thank our staff, because while Kim does some pretty good stuff, it's really the staff that make him look as shiny as he does when he shows up.
100% agree.
That and Nikki who dresses him. Those are the two. All right, so moving on to the next item of agenda, approval of the minutes of the executive committee dated March 21st. You should have received them in advance of the meeting. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to review, and I'd like to ask, are there any additions or corrections? And if there are none, I would be willing to entertain a motion.
To approve the executive meeting minutes on 21st.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
or abstentions? All right, thank you for the approval of those minutes. Moving on to the next, approval of the minutes for the board meeting for March 21st. Moving on to the same, if you've not had an opportunity to review, please review now for accuracy and make it known if you have any additions or corrections. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Thank you. And next, approval of the minutes for our specialty call board meeting dated April 4th, which should be behind tab 8 in your binder. It was a pretty quick meeting. Any additions or corrections? And if not, I'll just need a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Don't all second at once.
Um,
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And finally, today, this is not a trick, it's not a trick question. There's not really a tab 10, but Dr. Kennard, who is our our interim secretary.
I like that.
our
It gives me a
interim
little
secretary,
wiggle room.
will give the report for this morning's executive committee.
Thank you. I've been called a lot worse than interim, so let's go with that. We had 4 agenda items before the executive committee this morning. 2 were similar requests, all by Zoom appearance. The first of which was Dr. John Perry, who's a local fertility specialist seeking exception for the extended mileage rule for collaboration with a nurse practitioner. That would extend their services down to the Gulf Coast and in a limited procedural role. That request was granted. The second one that was similar was a dermatologist in Starkville seeking exception to Part 2615 Practice and Physician Assistance Rule 1.6 mileage extension. And in a similar manner, we granted that request. And that was more of a backup for the backup physician for that practitioner. So it'd be a very limited role for the backup physician, but the exception to the rule was granted under the circumstances. And the third one was the request for exception to 2080 hour in-state physician practice requirement for collaboration with nurse practitioners in Part 2630. That was also by Zoom appearance. That request was denied. That was an HIV medicine operation where both practitioners were out of state, and the physician practitioner that was collaborating, requesting the approval, did not actively practice medicine at all. So that request was denied, and they were referred to Dr. Cleveland for more clarification about how to maybe obtain what they needed to reapply. The fourth was we voted to enter an executive session to discuss a licensee application, and there was general discussion with Dr. Cleveland, but no action was taken or needed.
All right, so you've heard the decisions from the executive committee meeting this morning. Is there a motion to accept? A second?
Second.
Second.
And at this time, any discussion? I would like to just provide a bit of clarification with respect to the second appearance, which was that of the PA. That was a situation where the exception was for the backup physician to be outside of the practice house, and people looking confused.
For the backup position to actually have the extended mileage requirement, they are in the same group practice in multiple sites. So this is for the backup physician to be a practicing physician, but who is more than 75 miles away from the dermatology practice that they will be serving as the backup when the primary collaborating physician who's in that same office goes on vacation. So it was really just them being exceptionally thorough and making sure that they complied with the letter of the law, both in the primary collaborating physician, but to also ensure that they wouldn't have to shut down their clinic whenever the collaborating physician was not available to be on site.
And I'd just like to clarify that, in our third case, the request for the exception to the, it was a request for the extended mileage collaboration, but, anyway,
There was more that would have been needed. That request would not have been sufficient to cover the
Exactly.
concerns for the presentation and the practice model that they proposed.
right.
All right, so there's a motion on the table to accept the executive committee report. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. At this point, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the report from Licensees Education and Communication Committee. Dr. McClendon.
Thank you, Dr. President. We last met on April 5th. Just to discuss a couple of topics that we went through, the regulation changes related to 2640 in the bariatric medicine language that was certified by the OLRC. Apparently the regulations have been changed and have to be submitted to the OLRC, and that they had approved it to issue this certificate. And so we just notified if those were filed, that we agreed that they would be disseminated to licensees via email and through the Mississippi State Board website. This is where there's also a discussion regarding dissemination. Disciplinary action forms other than the Mississippi Board website. So the active discussion, the motion to email a list of board actions with a brief description of the action using the license number as the only identifier to all licenses was made by members community. And that was also there was discussion concerning possible future policy statements. A motion was made to table that discussion. So take that up in future meetings. And I want to just bring up, this is now a more working type committee more than before. And so I just want to bring it up for discussion of how would we like to proceed in terms of getting reports. Do we need to approve every decision that we decide on in this committee, or do you just want the report? Do we just use our judgment if an important enough topic comes ahead that we want to pass it along to the board? Just wanted to bring it up just because this committee hasn't been this active before as it is now. We're reviewing basically any important communication that's going to be pushed out with the public, just making sure that it's been handled appropriately. Just want to bring that up for discussion, have thoughts about how to handle this.
So, my personal opinion, just kind of trying to wrap my head around the scope of the work would probably be, I think some things may be appropriate. For example, policy statements and those kinds of things would probably be appropriate to come through for, like, you guys be the primary space of work creation, addressing, come up with a proposal. That statement can then be presented to the full board for a vote or for additional discussion, retooling, et cetera. But I think when it comes to other issues that relate to communications that needs to be forwarded to licensees, there are some instances in which it would be very appropriate for the committee to have something that comes up to them and say, for example, we won't have to wait till the next board meeting, but that information can come as a recommendation from you all to go directly to the executive director and the senior leadership team to be able to push some of that stuff forward. I think, sorry, I guess the answer is it could be both, depending on, what in particular you are planning to communicate. Like, I don't know that this board needs to entertain every communication that goes to licensees that are educational in nature and those kinds of things. But when you're talking about the creation of or the need for policy statements and things of that nature, I think that would be very appropriate to come to this body for further discussion, more robust discussion, and also for approval. Anybody else have thoughts on that? You guys are real quiet this
No,
morning. We need to get coffee for everybody. What-
You read my mind. I couldn't have articulated it better.
At the discretion of the chair, whether to bring it to the full board or not.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But when you say things like board policy and stuff like that, I think that should be a board decision, right? And then so when it comes to those things in particular that kind of stand as the consensus and agreement for how the board's position on a particular issue. I do believe that that's something that the full board should have an opportunity to vote on and discuss. But I mean, when you have people in place that you trust, I think that's a little easier, but you also want to have some kind of framework because we're not always going to be the same people working together all the time. And so you always want to make sure that we have checks and balances in place. But that's why I said communications and stuff like that. A lot of that's discretionary and can kind of allow you all to be a little bit more nimble and responsive to kind of whatever like emergent needs or questions come up without having to pull all of us together to be able to rubber stamp it. You would have the discretion to be able to move forward with some of those communications on your own without it having to come through us. But I mean, of course, you would still report that was done, but wouldn't necessarily require our approval for you to move forward.
Thank you for your input.
All right. So we'll just take your report for information, Dr. McClendon, since there were no action items there. And so moving on to the next item, permissibility of dispensing and reselling products obtained from outsourcing facilities under Section 503B of the FD&C Act by board licensees. That sounds exciting.
You make sure that microphone's up.
Oh, we do this every time, don't we, sweetheart?
I'm leaving folks in the.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you can hear me, I have 3 representatives of the pharmacy board here who are already waiting in the back and has to be allowed to join you in executive session to discuss this issue. Also request, and it's the director, the deputy director, and their counsel. I would ask that I also be allowed to attend executive session so that we can discuss potential litigation, and Dr. Cleveland, of course, because this is a discussion about prospective litigation where an open meeting would be detrimental to the state interest. So I would request that the board entertain a motion to close session.
All right. You've heard the rationale. Is there a motion to close the meeting? Okay, so it's been moved and properly seconded to close the meeting to consider whether to go into executive session. I guess to discuss a matter that may result in litigation. All in favor? Aye. Oops, I don't vote. And all opposed? Any abstention? All right.
Not long there.
Francis, are you gonna come back here and get Dr. Darsh all the time?
Yes.
You're gonna call me?
Yes, sir.
We had that issue this week. I wonder if this is a bad. So. That's
now out of executive session, and we will hear from Dr. Kennard.
And so there was just a general discussion with members of the Board of Pharmacy, including their executive director and attorney for that board, regarding some matters of compounded drugs as stated in the agenda item. And there was general discussion, but no action needed or taken.
Right, thank you. Next, the next item on our agenda is behind tab 13. So regarding investigative subpoenas, at this time, might we have a motion to close the meeting to consider whether to go into executive session to discuss these investigative subpoenas?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
Dr. Joyner and Dr. Gersh still with us throughout the rest of the day, or?
I can try.
Great question.
that is a great question for the purpose of the
I
record.
can talk.
Are we coming back?
So they were not
Gersh is here. Yes. So move. Aye. Aye. Dr. Gersh is on. All right, thank you. Okay.
Congratulations. That's great. Yeah, we got so many good, like, videos. That's- All right. We are now back in open session and Dr. Kennard will give the decisions of the executive session.
Yes, after a thorough discussion of each listed agenda item and case number, both investigative subpoenas were approved.
All right, thank you. So at this time, we are going to kind of amend our agenda a little bit to include, if we're going to skip over the items 14 and 15 and go to 16, which is the case of Dr. Trung Nguyen. And there's I think this is a proposed consent order. So we will hear from Dr. Nguyen and his counsel.
And please the board, this time, thank you for agreeing to take Dr. Nguyen out of order on the agenda. He was careful accident here. And we do have a proposed consent order. Distribute copies of the exhibits, including. Okay, so just that. Okay.
Yeah.
We have it behind tab
You do have-
16, behind tab 16.
That didn't get added to my book, that's my fault. Good, that's the primary thing that you need is a consent order. I'd like to do a short brief introduction. This matter relates to Dr. Nguyen's practice of telemedicine in Mississippi, specifically with regards to weight loss. This was scheduled to be a full evidentiary hearing until Monday morning, when Dr. Nguyen agreed to and return the proposed consent order. There are some serious issues, and the board may have some questions for Dr. Nguyen. So when I get through this short introduction, I'm going to ask that he be sworn to be available for your questions. But Dr. Nguyen was practicing weight loss through telemedicine, and he did prescribe medications, including Schedule III controlled substances, specifically phentermine, without conducting physical exams as required by our rules and the telemedicine statute. But the primary terms of the consent order, the standard terms are there. First of all, Dr. Nguyen, she will tell you, he voluntarily began abstaining from practice in the state of Mississippi beginning in June of 2023. Okay, when the investigation began, and in his answer to the charging affidavit, Dr. Nguyen admitted that his practice model was inconsistent with Mississippi telemedicine rules and law, and acknowledged that he would no longer be practicing telemedicine in Mississippi with that model, and he acknowledged fully that he had been violating the rules, took responsibility. The nature of this case is serious, but Dr. Nguyen was willing to agree to stringent proposed sanctions. And I think this is important because it sets not a legal precedent, but it's a good model in the future. And Dr. Nguyen agreed to a 1-year suspension of his license immediately stayed. That would be from July 1 of 2023 to June 30th of this year, but it would be immediately stayed because he has not been practicing for that year-long period. He has also agreed to a prohibition or restriction on his practice of telemedicine for an additional 6 months. The Dr. Nguyen, and that's all that Dr. Nguyen was doing in the city, was practicing telemedicine. And he can tell you his plans for now, but as I understand, Dr. Nguyen practices in Texas. He's primarily an emergency physician there, and those are his plans to do. Yeah. So those are the basic terms of the in order. So at this time, Mr. Angela, would like Stephen Angelo, I'm sorry, this is Dr. Wynn's attorney, and this is Dr. Wynn, Stephen Angelo. He would like to make some comments before we swear.
Yeah, sure. Just briefly, thanks for rearranging the schedule to accommodate us. And I think, Dr. Nguyen, as referenced here, has been practicing weight loss medicine for almost 10 years. And during the pandemic, as he can talk a little more, they expanded their practice in order to accommodate a lot of patients who weren't able to see their primary care doctors. Weight loss clinics had closed. And while they reviewed the Mississippi telemedicine laws, they inadvertently did not realize that there was a specific portion of the statute related to prescribing controlled substances via telemedicine for obese patients. Once they became aware of that, they immediately stopped. And he has not practiced in Mississippi and doesn't plan to practice in Mississippi in the future. I think we can. I'm happy to also weigh in as we all have any questions about that. But just kind of want to give a little bit of background on that. Before we start.
Go ahead and stand. Yes, sir, please. We'll have to get that mic really close. Oh, okay. Ms. McKenzie has battled around some copies of the exhibits. They are all available on the reserve project that you need to see. Exhibits.
Paper.
I mean, you don't have to.
People did all this stuff.
As the past practice in trying to kill fewer trees.
It's a sapling.
Many hard copies. Now, if it needs one, we can certainly get some more copies. Good morning, Dr. Good morning. So there's that earlier outside, in the meeting. My name's Paul Lawrence. Yes, sir. And as I told the board in my opening remarks, you returned a signed proposed consent order to us on Monday morning, correct? Yes, sir. And I'd like to just briefly talk through the primary provisions of that. First of all, don't mind, you heard me describe your practice and your attorney describe your practice to the board. Is there anything more that you'd like to tell the board that they should consider about the nature of the practice?
Yes, if I may. We have 2 clinics in Texas, which we have now scaled back all the telemedicine, and we're going to basically be focusing on our 2 clinics in Texas. We did when we first were practicing the telemedicine, it was during the pandemic, and obviously with everything going on with COVID and everything, we thought that was going to be like the new norm. Everything was going to be telemedicine. Obviously, the pandemic's over. Thank God. And so we have now scaled back. We did research on the telemedicine laws, and what we didn't realize is there's the state laws that are separate from telemedicine laws. Obviously when I discovered that, we stopped. When we do the video conference with a patient, they are filmed weighing themselves and they have to have a tape measure, blood pressure cuff and everything. And so they measure their waist. We do anthropometric measurements of the patients too. We don't just go by BMI, we do that percentage. And so everything's videotaped before, anything else is done. So that's how the telemedicine practice works. Since the pandemic is over and since, we found we're not in compliance with the laws, I'm not here to be antagonistic. We made a mistake. We weren't in compliance. I have not practiced in a year here. My license actually expires at the end of June here. And, but I will renew it because of the telemedicine consent order. I think I have to renew it, right?
It would be a separate practitioner data bank report.
Okay.
Surrender wildlife.
Yeah.
Wow. Or didn't renew, wow.
Right, yeah, so I'll renew it in June, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna practice in, anymore. I mean, we stopped that over a year ago. When we realized we were not in compliance with the Mississippi laws specifically. And actually, like I said, our telemedicine practice is we're scaling back. It's basically gonna be non-existent pretty soon because we're just gonna focus on Texas because the pandemic's over. Telemedicine laws are every state has their own laws, in concerning with telemedicine. So everything's different in every state. So that's our plan.
And Dr. Nguyen, let me back up just a minute. Your issues related to this type of prescribing originated in Kentucky.
Yes.
And you entered the Kentucky, describe what the Kentucky board, what actions it took.
The agreed order in Kentucky was, they didn't suspend my license. I was just had to go through a whole lifeguard assessment. Which is it was a very tough ordeal. It was expensive. It was time consuming. I did it. You go through the assessment. They make you take these modules. I was actually, I don't even know how many charts were reviewed by a board certified obesity medicine specialist. And she actually gave me a very positive review out of all the charts. And I didn't get a chance to speak to her initially. She reviewed a bunch of charts. She gave me a very positive review on the charts. Said some documentation could be better, of course, and everything can be improved, which we did. And then she did a oral review where I had to basically be questioned on cases that she felt that she basically did like a little board questions with me for 2 hours. After that was done, she said she wrote in the review that she would let me treat her own family. Now, the rest of the lifeguard was pretty tough. I had to go through the family medicine modules and everything like that. I did everything they wanted. I did the preceptorship. And so Kentucky has lifted the agreed order last time I met with them. And for the future, even though we're scaling back to Texas and everything like that, I have contacted Dr. Carrillo's, the obesity medicine specialist, and she has agreed to help me and be more of a mentor for me in my practice. And review charts quarterly with me and basically move forward as I plan to eventually sit for the obesity medicine boards. And those are very difficult boards. I've got a lot of CME to do. I mean, I've got a lot to do before I get there. But she's agreed to, we'll pay her for her time and her expertise to help me move forward. But it won't be in Mississippi.
Dr. Nguyen, in the exhibits which one was Surface Pros, and there are some of the hard copies. We have the Kentucky, multiple orders from Kentucky. We have consent agreement in Maine, waiver order in Texas, a surrender of your Alabama controlled substance certificate, and a suspension in Arkansas. All of those were as a result of the initial Kentucky investigation.
That is correct. And the Arkansas has rescinded the suspension. I mean, all those actions are being reversed. The Alabama whenever I was actually on shift when I got a call from their investigator, and he said, well, you're not using it anyhow because we weren't practicing there. I just had to control substance license there. And he said, well, you're not using it, just give it up and don't worry about it. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not using it. So because we don't practice there. Well, I didn't realize that when you give that up, that can be used against you. I had no idea, and so I'm getting it back. We met with Arkansas and they basically rescinded the whole suspension, and we're still working with Maine. But yeah, all this has been a very, very trying, it's been a great lesson. I mean, I've definitely learned a lot. I definitely feel like I'm going to improve my practice and take care of people better because of all of this. And I know it's been horrible, and like I said, we're just going to be focusing on Texas, where we're at.
All right, and, in the summons and affidavit served on you, this is on. I think it's on page 6, it's paragraph 8. The affidavit describes how, our investigation and practice began as, an investigation of potential reciprocal and iridescent touch. But that's, I believe you're aware now that, when we ran in Mississippi, prescribing before we discovered in fact there was a basis for independent charges, specifically the line that you were prescribing. Yes, sir. But I believe that in answer, the one thing, I don't think you essentially don't dispute anything in paragraph 8, or you didn't, your answer, except I believe you think our numbers were off, and we've done some double counting. Exactly, so our numbers.
That is correct, but, regardless, I was not in compliance, so I'm not here to be antagonistic. I mean, it is what it is. We were not in compliance, and
again, we did not put the in excess of 1,000 pages of medical records, which you tend to charge for it, but, you did maintain, complete charts on each of these patients, including, measurements that they provided to you.
yes,
Vital signs, et cetera.
Yes.
Document that.
yes, it is in our EMR. We developed our own EMR system, and everything has to be filled out.
If you were personally involved with your patients, correct?
That's
And just so that we can, do this for the record, I mentioned the opening. It's all right, I will speak up. If I could just talk to Dr. Nguyen. So you've agreed to the 1-year suspension from July 1, 2023 to June 30, 2024, immediately stay. Is that correct?
yes, sir.
You understand that because that's a state study, it will not be independently reported to the.
Yes, sir.
Item 2. You've agreed to be for prohibition against practicing telemedicine in the city for 6 months.
Yes,
And that practice prohibition will terminate automatically. You can understand that that is reported. That is like a restriction.
yes,
Also, Lieutenant agrees to, CME courses in ethics and prescribing, correct?
yes,
Item 4 is simply a labor law and rules, provision, which is standard. You agree to reimburse the board, for cost up to our statutory maximum $10,000.
yes, sir.
And the rest of the terms of the consent order relate to consideration by the board. In that if the board does not accept the consent order or the board offers a different terms, that this matter would be reset for a full evidentiary hearing for board's discretion for the next meeting. That's all the questions I have for Dr. Nguyen. Do you have any questions, Sean? Well, I defer to the hearing officer, but I tend to.
Do you have any questions for him? Okay, board members? Do you have any questions?
Dr. Nguyen, so your training is your family medicine?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm kind of grandfathered into the emergency departments, and a lot of the bylaws now, you have to be boarded in emergency medicine, but I've worked at a level 2 trauma in El Paso, and I've been out there for years. So I was actually the co-director out there when they were level 3, for helping them get to level 2. And I'm gonna be honest, I think that my training was excellent at University of Oklahoma for family medicine. We were trained so well back then. When I came out, there wasn't enough emergency medicine doctors to fill the ERs, so they employed ABFM doctors. Our training was, I felt, was so adequate that we were able to work in high level emergency departments.
And are you still so is your practice now primarily focused on weight loss and away from that emergency life?
I'm still credentialed at the level 2. I don't work there as much anymore. I mean, I've really backed off. I'm focusing more on my 2 clinics. I still do part-time in the underserved emergency departments. I'm with Christus. I work in like the little outlying, smaller Winsboro, smaller towns that are underserved. And so I still work some there. I still like to keep my skills up in the emergency department. Don't use it, you lose it. And so I'm still wanting to do that. I still enjoy medicine. I still have a passion for it. I didn't for a while. I think I've made like full circle. I'm kind of back to being real passionate about taking care of people like in the emergency, because it is a high burnout job, emergency medicine. And but I think within the last year, even with all this happening, I've had some really good cases in the emergency department, and that brought me why I even wanted to be a physician. So things have changed a lot, and it's been tough, but I think moving forward, I've learned a big lesson. It's going to change the way I practice, and hopefully we'll take better care of patients.
Dr. Lopez?
How many states
Maybe something which I think at one time, but most of them, to be honest, I think when we finally looked at everything, it's down to like maybe 10 or 15, all of which were out there. And it was during the pandemic, obviously, because we didn't know what was going to happen. We thought the new norm was gonna, people were seeing their primary cares on video. Like my wife had to see her primary care on video, and everything, we thought it was one direction. It's not, thank God. And so now we obviously are shifting back to the two.
So I wouldn't hold you to the number, but to that point, how at the height of your practice, like when you were, if you can think back to when you were busiest, like what was your patient volume like?
We would probably see 30 or so
A day? Wow.
but not on the weekends. But that was if you included all this,
Mhm. Any other questions, anybody?
in obesity medicine, yes, it's going to be a journey for me. It's a lot of CMEs initially, but I bought the board review book and I've been talking to Dr. Carrillos, and it's not a board that you're just going to think you're going to pass easily. I'm going to have to work a lot, and it's going to take me a couple of years before I can actually apply and sit down for those boards. You have to be board certified. You have to have one board certification, and you have to apply, you have to have all the CMEs, but looking at the board review book, it's not going to be something that you can just pass easily. I'm going to really have to work, I'll study, and I'm going to, again, I'm going to be mentored by Dr. Carrillos, who's already, that's her specialty. And hopefully that in the next couple of years, I can actually sit for those boards and pass. But it's not going to be easy. I'm not telling you, I was looking at those board review questions, and that's very, very difficult. I think it's just gonna be Texas. I mean, unless my whole family moves somewhere else, but we have the 2 clinics in Texas. That's just where we're gonna be.
Anything further?
I don't have anything for other doctors. Patients to be made to us throughout the process.
All right. Okay, so if there's nothing further, you guys have heard from our licensee. I'll entertain a motion.
Like that motion to accept.
So it has been moved and properly seconded that we accept Dr. Nguyen's consent order. Is there any further discussion on this matter? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Any abstentions? Consent order is approved.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Lynn, thank you.
Well,
Thank you for that.
So it is 11:59 and 32 seconds, which seems like the perfect time to break for lunch. So we will recess, and reconvene in how much time? 45 minutes or an hour? 45 minutes. So we'll be back. We'll give ourselves the extra 15 seconds and we'll be back at 12:45. Thank you. We're gonna let them finish chit chatting. You got 20, we'll give you 20 seconds and we'll start at 12:55. We'll just be a little 10 minutes in behind.
You're holding to go.
Well, I didn't really hit it when we recessed, but so you know,
You feeling the power?
not quite exactly, but I'm getting close. All right. Okay, we are back from recess and we'll continue with our agenda items. So we'll start with tab number 14, which is hearing in the case of Dr. Fakaridi. And it's a motion for continuance.
Yes, this is really a housekeeping matter. Is when we went back and reviewed the audio tape from the March meeting. That time I informed the board that we were in the process of reviewing all of the facts of the investigation concerning Dr. Fakaridi, and that we needed to do a complete top to bottom review, make decisions whether or not the charges were appropriate, but the different charges, whether they be amended, et cetera, and asked that this matter be continued until we make that decision and it's right for a decision by the board. So all I'm asking for today, and talk to Doug Mercier, who's Dr. Fakaridi's attorney, I'm just asking that we not be required to put this on the agenda again until the executive director has made the decision that we're going to proceed. It's still appearing on the agenda every month, unless you give us permission. So I'm asking for this to be made an indefinite continuance. And that's the extent of my request.
We ever done that before?
Yes.
A few times.
Once that I can think of, that's Dr. Sanders. We're in the process of resolving that.
So is he practicing now?
Yes, sir.
And we don't think he's a dangerous to the public?
We don't have enough evidence to climb the hill of imminent threat.
Okay. So hearing that, is there a motion?
What's the potential end of this situation?
We could dismiss the charges that are currently voted, could amend the charges. We could bring new charges. This is a very old case. The evidence is quite stable. And as a matter of fundamental fairness, after discussing it with Dr. Cleveland, we felt that a top to bottom review was the only fair way to proceed.
What about timing? Don't we say this is indefinite?
The evidence needs to be freshened up on this case. And that recommendation is not just coming from me, it's coming from our expert witness. And so we're in the process of gathering new case data from the physician. And we'll have to have an expert review on that data, and then we'll make our decision where we're going to go.
Is there a motion?
To accept the proposal of the definite continuance of this case.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion for indefinite continuance pending the outcome of additional investigative methods, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. So before we proceed to the next item on our agenda, I'd just like to go back. Earlier when we were going through approval of minutes, I inadvertently skipped over item number 9 on the agenda, which is approval of minutes for the specially called telephonic board meeting that was dated April 11th. We did April 4th and did not do April 11th. So if we could please just
in order to make sure that everything is done in order and on the record appropriately, if we could take a moment before we begin our next matter and go back to that. It is behind tab 9 in your binders. I am so sorry, guys. I got ahead of myself. But well, thanks, Francis, who did. I'm glad that's why we need multiple layers. Teamwork makes the dream work. So if you could please look over, the minutes from that meeting that are included in your binder. And if you don't have any additions, or corrections, if I could get a motion to, approve those minutes.
Second.
So everybody in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All righty. Thank y'all so much. And again, I apologize. All right. Now, moving on to item number 15 for today's agenda, hearing in the case of Edward Moak from Brookhaven, Mississippi.
Madam President, at this time, I would ask Jackie to help me distribute an email we received at 7:23 a.m. this morning from Dr. Moak requesting an additional continuance, and I would wait till you have their copies that can be viewed by the board before continuing.
Yesterday.
May please. It was yesterday. I apologize. I didn't see it till this. 5:12 p.m. yesterday, sent to Kristen Wallace, who had already left the office at that time. May it please the board of the hearing officer, as complaint counsel with this matter, I object to any further continuance. Dr. Moak appeared, as the board members may recall, in March, and when this matter was called up, he asked for a continuance until May, specifically told the hearing officer it was for the purpose of retaining counsel. And we didn't hear anything more from Dr. Moak. I didn't until this email was sent to us yesterday afternoon. So I would ask that the board, I'm going to ask for very limited relief today, but I would object to the continuance and ask the board to deny.
I have a question. Are you prepared to move forward with the hearing today?
I'm prepared to move forward for interim relief, and can present testimony from Ms. Kristen Powell as to why that was warranted. But as you will hear, the problem is that the examining committee, through limited cooperation from Dr. Moak, has been unable to be in a position to provide a final report to this board as its ultimate question of Dr. Moak's fitness for duty. And Ms. Powell can very quickly explain that. So what I'm asking the board to do in the conclusion of this hearing today is to extend the suspension. The license was temporarily suspended as an imminent threat by Dr. Cleveland in December. That was until this board examining committee could do its job and the board could resolve this matter. Today, I'm going to ask that you simply extend that suspension and state that Dr. Moak must appear before the board and request that the suspension be lifted. That's a slight change from the board. We simply will put the onus on Dr. Moak to comply and cooperate with the examining committee and the PhD. And again, when he has fulfilled his duty to cooperate with the examining committee, and the examining committee has enough information to provide a final report to this board and recommendation, the onus is on Dr. Moak, would be on Dr. Moak to come before the board and ask for the suspension.
So I have a question. All right, so my question is just based on this communication that we have received. So first of all, it appears that what has been presented is that so the individual who evaluated him in advance of his appearance before us, albeit transient in March, did not feel at that time to be able to provide clearance. And before that, we have information that would suggest that there was significant impairment. So we don't have anything that says that there is substantial evidence to believe that there has been significant enough improvement by a person who's evaluated him to be able to say confidently that that he would be able to be clear. That's all, that's what we got so far.
Yes, ma'am, and that would be, that's the content of, Kristen Powell's testimony that I anticipate she would give.
Yes. So, is there a motion with respect to the request for continuance?
Next question. We feel confident it's not actually this. Yes, with some reservation, we did every start. Know that when he was initially suspended by Dr. Cleveland in December, we actually wrote a few prescriptions after that and communicated with Dr. Moak. One of the few times we were able to make it clear to him that if he continued to practice, that he would be faced formal disciplinary charges for violating the executive record order. We have no evidence that he has practiced since December. Yes, sir, absolutely.
The original agreement was an agreement not to practice. And he was under an agreement not to practice. He continued to practice even after the agreement to practice. That's when I took the executive director's action of imminent threat. And he has not practiced since then.
We have no evidence that he has.
Okay.
Has an investigator looked at him to know whether or not he's practiced?
Well, we use the systems that are available to us to check whether we believe somebody's in practice.
But you're confident.
We feel pretty confident that he is. I mean, there's no way to ever be 100% sure.
Yeah.
That, you know, I mean, I can't prove that you're not practicing, right? I mean, so, I mean, I'm not trying to be, you know, flippant about it or anything like that, but if somebody wanted to really go underground and practice medicine, it would be very difficult for us to root it out.
I just know a little bit of history. Found out low. I was just asking, but when I would just add to what the director said that we are confident that he has not prescribed any medications that are reportable to the PMP since December. That we can be sure.
So, so based on what we've heard,
New system in July.
I can't come fast enough. All right, so based on the information that's been presented to us thus far, we need to determine whether or not we are going to grant this continuance.
Can I ask
And we will have time for discussion too, but if you need to do this in advance of the motion, that's.
what's the difference between interim relief and a continuance?
I'm asking you to change the language of the suspension. Right now, the suspension is from one board meeting to the next. At this point, we have no idea when Dr. Moak will have participated, complied with examining committee sufficiently to know when we can bring this on for hearing. So what we're asking is he be suspended. Then he must come back, ask the suspension be lifted, whatever the grounds may be, to include an examining committee report or anything else he might want to present. But this matter should not be, it's not having, moving it from one meeting to the next is not having any motivating effect on Dr. Moak based on the information.
Thank you.
So the first one we approved allowed the board to have more time to collect what it needed. This one is similar, but it is to put the onus back on the licensee to produce what he needs, but they're both indefinite suspensions.
Well, and actually that is what the board came very close to doing at the March meeting. But when we listened to the audio tape, it was not clear. I do not recall the exact circumstances of the January continuance. But because that was a 15-day matter, that is, when there's a temporary suspension, we must give a physician a hearing within 15 days. I believe that Dr. Moak, it was either he requested or we agreed to. We did not oppose it. Candidly, that's right. He was
ill, was what we were told. We were told he was ill. We were told that he was ill, which people get sick. But we were told he was ill and that the continuance was based on a medical issue that required or precluded his ability to be present. And then subsequent to that, he showed up without nary a human being to represent him. And when he, I guess, saw the binders and papers, thought that it was more prudent for him to be represented by counsel. So the last time that we said yes was about really creating an opportunity for due process and adequate representation, even though this can have been kicked down the road already. And we now have at least 2 experiences where this licensee has been asked to come before this board so that we can clarify and maybe even resolve whatever the issues and concerns are. And on very short notice, usually within 24 hours or less, we've been kind of given the stop sign. That's irrespective of the pending matters that have still not been resolved, that were the whole purpose of what we were trying to address in the first place. It's just my recollection of a cursory summary of the way that this has gone, at least over the course of the past 6 months.
And I would hypothesize, since we got an email from Dr. Moak, that he still hasn't secured counsel.
Well, sometimes clients will just do things on their own without necessarily informing their representation. I think that, hypothesizing about that is not really as much of a concern because he's not even speaking about that now. It's going back to addressing the matters that really we were supposed to be discussing or adjudicating over the course of the past couple of months. So again, the issues are, number one, this is his submitted request for a continuance that is currently being objected to by our counsel, and a alternate pathway has been recommended. So now the issue is what is the pleasure of the board?
I'll ask you, is his license suspended right now?
It is.
Okay. I support that.
So the best way so in the form of a motion, it'll be a motion to deny request for a continuance. Okay. We're breaking it down. Is, okay, is there a second to, Dr. McClendon has, at least moved that we deny the request for continuance. Is there a second for that? Second by Dr. Loper, thank you. Any further discussion on the matter of whether or not we deny or approve the request for continuance?
Does this stipulate that he would have to, reapply for, to restore his license?
The motion on the table is to deny the request for continuance. That's it. So there's nothing else that's stipulated in the motion to deny the request for continuance. And then we might, if there's a.
So his license is, I'm sorry, you were finishing on it.
No, I was just gonna say that this is, because this is the request that's before us right now.
So it's assumed that the suspension remains because nothing has happened. We don't have to say that. So he's just suspended.
So I'm not, so we might have some more work to do, but I think the first issue
Yeah.
is this.
Right.
And then we can deal with actions as a result, because right now, this matter is pending before us.
Right.
And we have a request for continuance. So we either say yes or no. And then once we determine yes or no, then we go to the next step of what comes after the yes or no to the continuance. Because if we say yes to a continuance, then that changes what they do.
Yeah.
If we say no, then we have more work to do. So this is not intended to be all inclusive. So if you're having questions about what comes next, we got to kind of take it in pieces.
Well, my question is this email even a request for a continuance?
It is. A new continuance should, if you read the last statement of this email, thus a new continuance should allow time for my repeat, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So that is exactly what this is.
Okay.
It's a request because he basically said, I can't come tomorrow. I don't have my stuff together and I will request a continuance.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then the next actionable thing, the
Well-
stuff you talked about would follow, happens when.
When we finish, when we vote on this,
Okay.
when we vote on this,
Okay.
we have a pending matter.
Right.
Okay. So there is a motion and a second to deny the request for continuance. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so the request for continuance has been denied. Mr. Barnes.
In the interest of attempting to move this matter forward as quickly as possible, I can make all of our exhibits available for their own Surface Pros and give us the copies. But I do not believe the board needs all of that information to rule on the relief I am requesting here today. I believe the testimony of Kristen Powell will be sufficient. And so to clarify, my lack of opposition in March was based on the fact that the suspension would be continued until this matter was resolved by the board. And Dr. Moe signed an agreement on practice. He violated that. The examining committee sent us an interim report saying that Dr. Moe was not cooperating, had not completed the evaluations necessary for them to make a final reporting recommendation. Found out he had violated the agreement not to practice. Dr. Cleveland issued an order of temporary suspension. At each continuance in January and March, that was continued on the basis that the suspension continued. You can see by looking at this email that Ms. Powell was copied on this email. Both Kristen Wallace, our compliance officer, Powell. So I would at this time call Kristen Powell so that she can provide some background and explanation for about her interactions with Dr. I ask that you should choose.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and
And this,
Y'all, I'm gonna apologize in advance if I start coughing.
also, guys, that there is information on your Surface Pro, as Paul mentioned, and it's also, there are some hard copies of some information pertaining to this case that's in tab 15.
And just for the record, we'll go ahead and mark these. Is this in a composite exhibit, board one?
Index. These will always, also make part of the record. All right, Ms. Powell, I know that the board is familiar with you, but for the record, would you please state your name and explain what you do?
My name is Kristen Powell. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm the Associate Director of Mississippi Physician Health Program. I handle a small portion of the cases that we see, mostly the ones that are very board involved, such as Dr. Mook.
And do you assist the
And usually the designated representative to correspond with the physician who's before the examining committee.
And Dr. Moak was referred to the examining committee last July, right?
Correct.
Were you the designated representative of the examining committee? You gave Dr. Moak? So during the course of the examining committee's evaluation of Dr. Moak, did he go to any facility for a formal evaluation of his fitness?
He did in September. He went to Talbot Recovery Center for a 3-day evaluation.
And what was the conclusion of that evaluation?
Not safe to practice with reasonable skill.
Did Talbot make any recommendations as far as future testing?
They did. They said that he needed to follow up with some medical professionals to take a look at his blood pressure issues, but also to look at his neurological issues post-stroke, but also to have the testing repeated in 6 months to a year, I think is what it said.
And that evaluation is a sealed exhibit. It's on pages 27 and 49. One of the additional evaluations Talbot recommended was for a psychological evaluation, right?
That's part of the neurocognitive testing, yes.
So, to your knowledge, has Dr. Moak gone to be evaluated by a psychologist?
Well, he attempted to have that evaluation done by Ed Manning. We never received a formal report from that evaluation. We received a screenshot of sorts of a MyChart note that Dr. Manning put in Dr. Moak's MyChart.
Did you communicate with Dr. Manning concerning that note?
Not until mid-April. I got a letter from Dr. Manning around April 20th, 16th, 20th, somewhere in there. And he apparently thought that I had a copy of his report and simply restated in very vague terms some of what he put into my chart note. I emailed him and explained that what I had was not sufficient. I needed a report from his office detailing the tests that had been done and the results of those tests so that we could actually compare to the Talbot report. And that I needed a statement from him saying that Dr. Moak was safe to return to the practice of medicine. And that if he could not do that or did not feel comfortable making that statement, that I needed to know so that I could refer Dr. Moak elsewhere for repeat testing.
To this day, have you ever seen a formal report from Dr. Manning?
No.
Did Dr. Moak provide you with a copy of anything else from Dr. Manning?
No.
was Dr. Manning's response?
To me, nothing. Actually, neither he nor Dr. Mo corresponded with me. The next development was that I got a call from Talbot again, confused as to why Dr. Mo was reaching back out to them. And I explained the situation and what was going on. They referred me to the psychologist who had done the testing back in September, but replied to Dr. Moak essentially saying that he needed to correspond with me so that we could work together to make a referral for him to get the testing done. I spoke with that psychologist. Her name is Dr. Rogers. She did not have any openings until July, but also did not feel that there would be a significant change if she repeated the testing. I relayed all of that to Dr. Moak via email May 1st, I believe, and referred him to a local psychologist who could repeat the testing. To this date, don't know that he has scheduled anything.
So at this time, the only evaluation that the examining committee has obtained expressing an opinion concerning Dr. Moak's fitness for duty is the Talbot evaluation, which concluded that he was not sexual.
Correct.
You have received anything, Dr. You have not received any affirmative opinions from any evaluator or any medical expert saying that Dr. Moak at this time is safe and fit to practice.
No.
Continue.
Any questions from the board?
So in general, just so that we have an idea, because a lot of the work that you do, we don't ever really get a chance to know about the work that goes on behind the scenes. So, and just using your opinion from your experience, is what you have experienced to this point with your communication with Dr. Moak and his response, is this typical for what you experience from other people? Is this like usual behavior, normal, that it's gone this way? Is this something that you expect to have happen, or is this behavior more atypical or unusual?
This is more atypical than what we usually see. Usually people follow through with the evaluation and then follow the recommendations because they want a resolution. I think what we're seeing from him is a mixture of the neurocognitive decline and not fully understanding, but also probably some personality traits that are kicking in, and it's making it very hard for him to communicate with me effectively and get a resolution.
If there aren't any other questions, excuse me, Attorney Barnes.
Except for a very brief, closing statement, I would ask some things. Again, all really the relief that I am requesting from the board today is that Dr. Moak's license be declared suspended, and that Dr. Moak must return and appear before the board to request that the suspension be lifted. Just that simple, just that straight, no other confusion. You've heard Ms. Powell's testimony. It's very different to communicate with Dr. Moak. So, and you know, we could all speculate about the reasons why, but this is atypical behavior. He was first referred to the examining committee. I believe it was maybe July 26th of July of 2023. So this has been going on quite an extended time. So that's the relief I would request.
All right, so you've heard the presentation of the information that we have available today in this matter. Is there a motion?
Move that we accept the motion to, I guess, continue the suspension as requested.
So Chick, the recommendation, do we want to incorporate, the recommendation, the Paul's full recommendation in that motion? That's what you'd like to do. All right, so then that would be to, so that his license would be suspended and that Dr. Moak must return to the board, in order to have that suspension lifted.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Medical school. That's adequate. Thank you for.
So is there any time limit on how long he has to wait or?
so the only, so we have, wait a minute, we have a motion that is on the floor. Is there a second for that? Now we can open the floor for discussion. And your question, Dr. Lippincott, was, does it have any time? While I can't speak on behalf of Paul and he was ready, he did say that that was all. He just said, yeah, he said, there's no time that was mentioned. It's just that his license is suspended and that he will have to return to the board to request for that suspension to be lifted.
Is there a rule he has to wait a year?
No.
So there's not.
Okay.
I have a question. Well, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the assessment report, he would like to go back to work at the age of 77? How old is
I'll have to.
You did 70s already.
he? In his 70s. And prior, how many years of practice?
I feel like I hear the question.
How many years of practice?
We've got answers back here.
Yeah, I have an answer for you.
Go ahead.
He's been licensed since 1981. He's currently 67.
67. That's young.
They misstated it. They said 77. Should be 67. Typo.
They are close to each other on the
Yeah.
keyboard.
Thank you.
Since during the discussion, the review of the documents, again, barring some typos. But they indicate that all these problems stem from, a struggle.
An event.
Event, about. That's created all this.
And from a matter of discussion, I think that even with the testimony that we've heard, I mean, there are, multiple sequela from stroke. And so cognitive effects are probably, I think people don't always think about those as often or as much as we do think about the physical effects. And when people have physical deficits, but I think it's also, I think that speaks to the importance of comprehensive evaluations to be able to assess all of the components that might influence a physician's ability to practice, because cognition for us is just as important as manual dexterity, and in some instances even more so. So I appreciate the fact that was one of the things that's called out, and that's a box that had to be checked off when somebody does experience a significant event such as a stroke. A great question.
One more question. Is this the same Dr. Moak that practiced in Richardson, Mississippi?
I don't know that.
And I do not know. I do not know the answer to that.
He's got a brother.
We had a brother that's also.
The Mopes are, they're a big family though. Big family. Yeah.
That is true, and this is not evidence, but one of the times we were able to communicate with Dr. Moak, which through his problem.
Like I said, I have a little bit of history on Dr. Moak. I assume this was him. It may not be.
His brother's a doctor too.
Well,
So I would like to just remind just 1 minute, gentlemen, 1 minute. I'd just like to remind us that we do have a motion on the floor. While family trees are very important, let's just kind of limit our discussion to the motion that's on the floor and the facts that will help us to make the best determination of how to proceed, if we can. Although, making sure that we have the right Dr. Moak is
Yeah.
important. And
Unless his brother's named Ed. They could both be named Ed, I don't know.
okay, so, anybody else have a comment pertinent to the motion that is on the floor?
Dr. Gibbons. And then who do we have a second to it? Correct? You did.
We have a second.
Okay.
So, because we were in
In
discussion,
discussion.
yeah. And we can continue discussion, but I would like it to kind of be, okay. All right, all in favor of suspending, just so everybody knows, suspending Dr. Edward Moak's license and indefinitely, and he will have to return to this board in order to request that suspension be lifted. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. All right. All right. So, that has pretty much brought us to the end of today's agenda. A little bit earlier than we might have anticipated. But that's only due to the efficiency of our great staff. So thank y'all so much. So at this point, since we don't have any other items on today's agenda, can we have a motion to either adjourn or recess until tomorrow for part 2?
Motion to adjourn or recess until.
Recess until tomorrow. I always have adjourn on my mind at the end of the agenda, but it's really technically it's a recess.
That's 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And you can hold on.
So-
to these, so I don't want-
So we are officially recessed because we didn't need a motion anyway. So thank you.
Or they can.
Thanks so much.
8 a.m., correct?
Yes.
All